Hi, I'm Doug Edwards, and this is Youth Worker on Fire. And today I have a very good friend, special guest with me today, Don Levonius. And Don and I go back a ways and met when he was a part of the church that I was student pastor to students and families. And that's how we met. And the first time we connected was actually at a place of his employment. And we'll talk about that for a minute. But Don, catch us up a little bit. You're a consultant now. Tell us what kind of consulting you do and why.
Great. Well, thank you for having me here today, Doug.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm principal consultant with Victory Performance Consulting, and I'm so fortunate. I get to go to different companies and meet with usually the leaders. And sometimes I provide training, and sometimes not. But it's always around performance. And it's been a current theme in my life from back when we spent some time at Disney together. But it's all about getting people to do what they're supposed to do as well as they can do it. And it's productive for the employer, obviously, but it's also gratifying for the employee as well. So a lot of times I'll go in and find out whether people know what's expected of them, or whether they've got the resources and the time and the staff to do what it is that they're supposed to do. And then I focused on the morale. And every one of us, when we go to work, we've got this discretionary effort, and we either give it to the organization or we don't. And often when employees aren't happy or they don't feel resourced or appreciated, then they kind of hold back some effort. So I do that full time now, just loving what I do.
Well, tell me about that. Tell me about ethics is one of those areas.
Correct, yeah.
And then the morale. And so give me a little bit on the ethics side. How did you come up, how did that all end up a part of your life?
Right.
And your focus and now your business?
Okay, so I'm the son of a cop. My dad was in law enforcement for 23 years. And for reasons we don't need to talk about now, I decided not to go that path. But I got into private security early in my career, way back in 19...
Yeah, exactly.
And it was a while ago, right?
Yeah,
and so,
exactly.
What I found is I really like to figure out why people do sometimes not what they're supposed to do in the workplace. And it's called deviance, employee deviance. And so I spent a good number of years catching people doing bad stuff. And what I realized was, as relates to youth and even adult employees, is that it would be naive of us to oversimplify a topic like ethics. What I discovered is that often good people do bad things for what they think are good reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But they've just kind of rationalized it. So I focus a lot on that and help organizations turn around the performance of their employees with regard to ethics as well. Sometimes it's a leadership issue. Sometimes it's not, but love doing it.
Just yesterday, you were telling me that, I believe it was yesterday, that you were speaking to a group of deputy sheriffs. Is that right?
Yeah. So I do training for the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
And we do a lot of training with law enforcement and of all different types and stripes. And so one of the things that we help them learn, and this happened to be a class for school resource officers, and we help them understand that, especially teenagers, they're going through a period of experimentation and exploration. And so they're going to do things that they're not supposed to do. So how do we kind of safety net them so that they can experiment without, getting into things that are going to harm them or harm others? So those sessions are all about helping people who work with youth recognize that good people do bad things, and we can't or shouldn't condemn the person, but just reset expectations and redirect them toward doing what we prefer that they do.
Tell me, who are the influencers in your life, in your teenage years?
Yeah, so obviously my mom and dad. From my dad I learned work ethic. From a very young age he had me working, first around the home, and then as soon as I was able to get permission to go work for an employer, I went out and got a job, and he taught me that. From my mom I just learned compassion for people. Later on in life, my grandmother, she influenced me. I spent probably more time in churches than many kids did because I was raised Roman Catholic and my grandmother was Protestant, and so I would go to Mass early in the morning, and then I would go to the Protestant church and the Bible study, and all day Sunday I went back and forth between two different churches. So I had two church families. It was great, but my grandmother definitely influenced me a lot. And then I know you want to talk about college, but I'm a musician as well, and so I'm a percussionist and drummer, and my music teacher at college influenced me greatly too. And you look back and you can see these people who have kind of reset the course of your life. And I was a music major, and what he challenged me to think about was that if I were going to be a professional musician, I would have to manage my own affairs. So maybe I should be a business major, and if I wanted to teach music, then I would have to be good at teaching, and so maybe I should be an education major. He made me realize that music could still be my love, or one of the loves in my life, but career-wise, perhaps there was a better option. So I changed my major to business administration.
So tell me what your process was before you ended up on the university Disney level.
I started with Disney a long time ago in security operations and then retail theft. Got into investigations and promoted to a position of leadership where I had responsibility for direct reports and others. And I did that for a while. I found myself leading investigations and loss prevention, they call it, for the Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom, a few of their theme parks, and the distribution chain, 5 distribution centers and so forth. And it was fun, but I will always, for the rest of my life, remember that I went to work on a Tuesday morning. It was like any other Tuesday morning. I drove my car to work and parked in my spot and kind of shuffled to the office, got my first cup of coffee, and was catching up on emails. And I got called in by one of the office managers to a briefing room. Didn't even know what was going on, and they called me in, and we had a bank of TV monitors on the wall at the time, and they were on the major news networks, and we had a lot of closed-circuit TV, and they still do. And I immediately recognized the icon that I grew up with in the skyline of New York City, the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you see where I'm going. It was a Tuesday morning unlike any Tuesday morning
Yes.
ever. And so as I went through a whole range of emotion in a matter of minutes, it dawned on me, oh, wait a minute, I'm responsible for protecting this property and all the people
That's
here.
why they had you in.
Well, for such a time as this, I happen to be in that moment, in that spot, right? And so, I snapped out of it, and we redeployed some people, and we did a whole bunch of stuff, and it was a pivotal point in my career. And here's why: because what I realized that we brought in consultants. I can't share a whole lot of detail. We brought in all kinds of technology and hardened the facility, and we did all the stuff that the embassies around the world do. But the difference was, or the concern that I had was that regardless of the equipment that we bought or the technology that we installed, it all came down to human performance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent a couple, maybe 3 years overseeing the anti-terrorism and loss prevention investigations training. After having trained people to do that for a number of years, I realized that my new love, career-wise, and my new passion was to help people do what they're already doing, only better.
Mm-hmm.
So I must have not messed anything up because Disney asked me to lead training for their transportation division. And so really cool period, monorails, buses, ferry boats,
Yes.
all the little watercraft, right?
Yeah.
So on a stressful day, I would go out and pilot the monorail for a few laps, or captain the ferry boat across the lake, and it was a
Gave
lot
you
of
a
fun.
mental release.
After doing anti-terrorism stuff for a couple of years and training against the worst case scenarios,
Mm-hmm.
which fortunately have not happened there.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely a release to see all the little kids get on the ferry boats and in the monorails, and to be in charge of training folks to do that. And beyond that, then I was promoted again, and I led training for the 25 Disney resort hotels that are Disney owned on the Orlando property.
Yes.
That ultimately led me. That was a part of Disney University, and that ultimately led me to lead training for the college and international college programs. It was people wanting to do well, needing to do well to perform, whether it's making an ice cream cone for a guest or making a bed as a housekeeper, to executing against defending that property, or as we used to say, protecting the magic against terrorism. It's all the same thing. It's how to motivate people, how to energize, equip, and train them to have an impact.
And to see themselves as having more than a paycheck or more than a degree.
Absolutely.
They were seeing that there was purpose in what they were doing,
Absolutely.
no matter what they
Yes.
were getting.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
were giving more than they were getting.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's especially true, and I'd love to hear what you think, but I think that's especially true of the emerging leaders, the younger generation, the up-and-coming generation. It's about relevance, and so internationally, certainly here in the States, the volunteerism of the millennial generation, or Gen Y, is greater than we've seen in previous generations. And so if we can like kind of unlock that, that passion by helping them see that, like at Disney we would train people, you're not just making French fries, you're not just helping people take a seat on a ride or an attraction, you're making memories. And so I'm not going to serve broken French fries. I'm not going to serve a wimpy looking ice cream cone. I'm not going to make the bed the way I make it at my house just well enough to get by. It's got to be perfect because it's somebody's vacation. It's their family memories. It's in their videos and their photos. So when we elevate someone's purpose at work and elsewhere to a higher level of importance, oh man, you can't hold them back from exerting discretionary effort. They're going to want to bring it because they realize that what they do is way more important than they might have even signed up for.
Yes, yes. And that was Walt Disney's, his dream,
Yes.
his vision, no chip paint.
Right.
Remember that about the carousel?
No light bulbs out, no chip paint, no
Right.
trash, no litter on the floor, on the ground.
Yeah, he saw that in other theme parks, and he thought, this is what we're not going to do.
Right.
Here's what. So he had a vision.
He did.
And and the hardest thing to get across to students, to families, to adults, is what our real vision is.
Right.
So I've been learning about vision boards.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever done a vision
I
board.
don't currently use them, but I've read a little bit. Yeah,
Yes,
so.
and we do that when we're getting ready to build an institution. We have a vision board. We have some kind of board to give us a plan that we're
Right.
visualizing. When we create a football team, they're always about a vision board.
Right.
About their X's and O's, but they're visualizing. Here's where we are. Here's what the end of the year is going to look like.
Right.
Here's what the Super Bowl is going to be like for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so we create that vision board. And so Walt Disney did that, and we know that very few people come away with more than 50% of what our vision really was.
Right.
So it's hard to get that across.
Yeah.
You guys were doing an incredible job of it, probably on the 75 to 80% scale of actually getting the vision inside those people.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me first address kind of Walt's approach to it, and then I'd love to share if we've got time to what I experienced with my corporate clients. And so Walt Disney, he and his brother Roy, they were first known for animated cartoons, right? They would not call them that at Disney, but
Right.
That's what we mostly know them as. And so Walt was used to being behind the camera, directing, whether it was animated or eventually he did live action, right? He worked with animals and nature, and he did all kinds of. So Walt Disney viewed everything through the lens of a camera. And so if the camera picked it up, then it had to be perfect. And so he used forced perspective in the architecture so that a camera would catch it, or remove the camera, the eyes of the guests as they arrive. And so I would encourage you and anyone else, next time they visit a Disney property, anywhere in the world, just opened up in Shanghai, as you know, to walk through and have a new appreciation of how it's like a movie set. And so line of sight is very intentional. You walk into any Disney theme park, and you're typically not going to see the castle in its entirety until you go through that opening scene. And then you'll walk over, and it's like the camera panning, and you'll get to where you see the camera, and it opens up. And they would have a dolly with the camera on a movie, and you would picture the opening scene of Forrest Gump, an old movie but a good one, right? And so you pan, and then, you see the primary focus. So we talk about vision. One of the things I notice with corporate clients is that in any organization, usually at the highest levels, you're doing the vision boards, you're talking vision, and you're talking strategy, and you're steeped in the mission of the organization. You know all these things.
Yes.
And strategic decisions, you've got to get capital expenditure approval. And so 6 months, maybe a year, you're living this. You're up all night, you're breathing this. I like to say the people who do the real work, the people who are in middle management and running the operation or the school or whatever it is, they're not seeing what the board and the directors and the C-suite and they're not even aware of what's going on. So there's a lot of time developing a vision. And then, tragically, leadership completely undercommunicates it.
Mm-hmm.
They might mention it once, or they'll allude to it, or maybe they'll do the big reveal and they'll unveil the new vision. And this is what we're going to do.
Yes.
And then they move on. And people haven't even had time to process the change or the new direction, or it's like I can't even formulate a question is what they're thinking. And we as leadership often are expecting them to execute right away. Like, here it is, run, go. And they're not ready for that yet. They've got to ingest, process, digest, and kind of, have time to formulate their role in it. And so if I would have an opportunity to talk with people, and when I do, I tell them, communicate, then communicate some more, and when you think you've over-communicated, you're getting close to communicating enough. Communicate it again.
Yes.
Because not everyone's been as close to the visioning and the strategy setting as you are.
7 to 12 times before someone gets what you're saying.
Right.
7 to 12 encounters.
Good use of broken record technique. You
Yes.
said it twice.
Yes.
You're helping me. Thanks.
There you go.
But it's true. It's so true.
Tell me about your professors I was very impressed with the professors that you hired
Mm-hmm.
for Disney University, and you handpicked them, some of them.
Some of them, yeah.
Tell me why you picked these particular professors, one from UCF, one from Valencia, I remember especially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so...
And we'll go into one of the curriculums.
And I think much of what I look for is transferable even beyond the classroom setting, but
Mm-hmm.
certainly the first thing that I look for in anyone that I'm going to hire is integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say integrity and authenticity. And what those words mean to me is, are you a person of character? Can I trust you? And are you who you tell me that you are? So integrity, can I trust you? Are you a person who follows through, kind of walks the talk? And authenticity, are you truly that avatar of yourself that you present to the world? And that's the number one. That's like a litmus test, because if I can't trust the person, then I don't know that I want to pour my life and my heart and myself into that person, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be guarded. I'm always going to be at arm's length, and I want to be transparent,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to be authentic. And I can't, or I have a harder time being transparent and authentic with a person when that trust level isn't there. So but that's kind of a low threshold. Like, if you can't scale that, then I'm not even going to look at the other things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The other things specific to the classroom, which I continue to do when I hire folks even outside of the classroom, is I'm looking for professors, instructors, facilitators, and leaders who have the heart of a teacher. And not every one of us has the heart of a teacher.
No.
And honestly, I look for accountants and lawyers and others to support my business, service providers who have the heart of a teacher, construction workers who have the heart of a teacher, because I'm gifted the way that I'm gifted, and I'm okay at some things, and I'm terrible at other things.
Mm-hmm.
But I often want to learn enough so that I understand those things. And if someone doesn't have the patience to explain it 7 to 10 different ways until finally my light bulb goes off and I get it, then they're not good in a classroom. They're not good influencing people in the workplace and beyond.
Yes.
So you've got to have the heart of a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And not, I'm looking for people. They come, they've got a lesson plan, of course. So they come and they've got the curriculum, they've got the lesson plan. They know what their goals are for the day.
Mm-hmm.
But if current events took the minds of the students in a different direction, if something that occurred within the community of the student body or the community of students elsewhere is distracting them from the curriculum, then that's where we need to go. We need to go where they are, not just literally, but mentally, emotionally. We're getting the whole person. We're getting the whole student. We're getting the whole employee. And so you've got to have the heart of a teacher so that your primary focus and your primary goal is always doing that which is going to resonate, influence, and impact the mind, the heart, the attitude, and the behavior the competency is what we'd say, right, of the person that you're wanting to influence and teach. And so it's not my way of teaching. It's not, I already said it. It's not all auditory. It's not all visual. It's not all kinesthetic. It's a combination. It's not all affective. It's not all cognitive. It's a combination. And it's not all my lesson plan or what the students want to talk about. It's a combination. And it's highly contextual. It's highly situational. Mm-hmm. And so when I would hire people, I'm looking for that they get it. That, it's not about them. It's first and foremost about the student. I think there's nothing more important for youth workers, for teachers, for pastors, for leaders. There's nothing more important for parents. There's nothing more important than to influence the emerging generation. Ultimately, that's our legacy.
Passing it on.
Absolutely, that's our legacy. And sometimes I'll do sessions on multi-generations in the workplace. And those are always fun because often the older folks in the room, and they'll complain that, well, these young kids, they expect everything for nothing, and there's this entitlement, and I'll let them vent a little bit. And then sometimes with the younger generation, they're like, well, the older folks are so old school. And then I ultimately bring them to a point to realize the older generation raised the emerging generation.
Yes.
So if we don't like the way that the generation has turned out, it's on us.
Yes.
When I finally get to that point where I can sit on my porch in my rocking chair with my coffee and just retire, mm-hmm. I don't know that I ever will fully, but mm-hmm. I want to look back in my rearview mirror and I want to see my own kids and other people's kids thriving, being productive, making positive change in the world, doing things for other people, because ultimately that's our legacy. It's not what I did. It's what people will do after I'm gone. That's my legacy.
That's what the greatest thinkers and people of our time, as well as in the past,
right,
thought of.
Yeah.
The ones who are the greatest. And that's in my studies of leadership
mm-hmm.
and educators and dream builders.
Right.
Those guys are not thinking of what it will be in my lifetime. It's what it will be in 3 lifetimes away from me.
Right.
What's out there.
Right.
Far beyond me. And so tell me about this one study, because, pastor to students and families, still volunteer on public school campuses. Mm-hmm. Right now I'm chaplain at Lake Sumter State for the baseball team.
Okay.
So I like to stay in all those areas, but because of what my faith affiliation is and where I go with that, it was unique to me to see the 5 love languages being taught as a course study mm-hmm. in a business university
right.
At Disney, but how it absolutely was the perfect fit. So tell us why you did that and what the effects were.
The 5 love languages is marketed and often used as a Christian program, mm-hmm. and that's its origin. It's filled with truth, mm-hmm. and so it works. And so we used it within our team, and we used it for the students as well, just really to help people recognize that not everyone's like me. Mm-hmm. God forbid if everyone were like Don. That would be horrible. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to live in a world like that, right? And so we've got complementary personalities and behavioral tendencies and love languages. And so some of us love words of affirmation, and so that's great. What could make that person's day is just a kind word. And so there were these 5 different love languages. You know them. I don't have to go through them all, but the reason that we use that is to help students recognize, as we taught them with DISC and Myers-Briggs and others, what color they are, what animal they are, what it makes them uniquely themselves. We help them learn to interact in a world that is not like them. So I may have a preference toward a certain love language, but if I want to influence and affect positively another person, then I've got to be bi or multilingual mm-hmm. with regard to these love languages. I've got to speak, in other words, the other person's love language.
Yes.
Is it quality time? Then I've got to just spend time with you. And, you and I could just be shoulder to shoulder watching a movie.
Yes.
And if your love language is quality time, then that's floating your boat. You're loving that. Mm-hmm. And it just makes the world a better place.
Well, the big one is acts of service. My wife is acts of service. I'm not. But then when I went through your course, I'd already seen the 5 love languages, but remember 5 to 12 times it didn't click.
Right.
And when I saw it in that environment of Disney University, it clicked. Oh my goodness, this is universal. This is people stay in businesses because their love language is met and they didn't know it.
Right.
People leave businesses, people leave marriages or stay because their love language was met or not because there is a love tank. And so, and in a tank of gasoline, even if there's just a little bit of gas in it, the engine will run.
That's right.
So in all those tanks, you want to fill them up, but if you just keep some in there, it's enough to keep people engaged because, but we always want, if we don't understand that, we want to give away our love language.
Right.
Because that's what we understand. We think everybody feels like we feel.
Well, that's our hard wiring from the factory, right? And so my perspective is my love language and my behavioral style, and if I'm not conscious of it, I'm going to keep giving people what I want. I'm going to give them the love language I want, and I'm going to relate to them the way that I like to be related to and with. And so if you're wondering what another person's love language is, just observe and listen. And you know, when they're saying kind things, when they're helping others, you'll know that, oh, so they're doing for others what they view personally as important.
Yes.
So that's their love language.
Yeah, I take that to the nth degree. I really believe that most everything we're dealing with in life, once I understood that, is the love language. And by the way, you can get the love languages test, very short test, for free and on different levels online. Just go online, look up the 5 love languages by Gary Smalley. That's the book as well. And you can download those and find out what yours are, find out what your children's are. And it's still not easy. Very simple, but not easy to do. The simplest things in life are the hardest things to do.
Application, yeah.
That's right. And so with that, tell me, give me your most painful moment. Tell me about when things came down at Disney and all of Disney's structure changed and it ended up affecting you. Tell me what happened.
Yeah,
and how painful it was.
It was horrible. Thank you for bringing a conversation there. But so in 2009, the economy was not doing well, and so decisions were being made, and I was part of some of the decisions about eliminating positions, and we were doing a strategic downsizing. And what I didn't realize was that as I was in rooms thinking about what positions we could do without, that there was another meeting going on thinking about positions that could be done without at my level. And so I came in on a fateful Friday and was called into an office, which is always concerning, and saw my vice president in there, which was concerning enough. And then I saw a senior leader from HR in the room. And, I kind of saw where it was going, and I was laid off. You know, one of the things I realized was that I had service awards. I don't say that pridefully. I mean, the company acknowledged performance, and I had a Lifetime Achievement Award, and I had a service plaque, and I had some other kind of ego type things in my office.
Yes.
And I'm driving home after having been laid off, and of course I called the love of my life, Amy, and I told her what had happened, and called some other folks and let them know. And I'm driving home. It was a long ride that day, you know, and so I'm driving home, and I glanced over my shoulder, and in my back seat was this box of trinkets, and like this Oscar here, and it kind of dawned on me that I was so proud of all those things, but if they were worth anything, why were they in a box in my back seat as I'm driving home, right?
Yes.
And so I in short order, I kind of hung out my own shingle. So I went through the range of emotions, not unlike those that I experienced on the morning of September 11th, you know, the whole grief cycle, right? The shock, denial, all that, right? I went through that whole continuum. And but then I decided that I was going to come out of it stronger. And I decided I was going to go into business for myself. And I decided that not that my fate is in my own hands.
We find that we're entrepreneurs whether we want to be
right.
or not. If we're going to survive, we cannot decide that somebody else has our back. Because in reality, God has our back. Our family may have our back. The people that we love the most really have our back, and many times we put them back
Right.
on the back burner.
Right.
So tell us how things are going well now. Tell me a little bit about the roadblocks that you had to swerve around, and a few things that would help people get to another level in life if they've lost their position or they've chosen to resign from their position.
Right. Right.
Is there life after a job?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm living proof of that. And so, let me first address some of the things that I was really blessed by and fortunate to have happen. Then I'll address the roadblocks. It'll make more sense. And so, one of the things that was a huge advantage to me was that of the 2,500 Disney employees who were laid off, many of them came from learning and development and organizational development. And so these were my contemporaries, these were my peers, some of them were my direct reports. And these are people who were all about employee performance, all about training people, whether it was technical skills or leadership skills, and optimizing an organization so that it performed well. And so without realizing it immediately, I had this group of people that I could subcontract work to and who could hire my services once they stood up their own consultancies. And so many of us never went back to corporate employment. I've got a network of 12 people that I work with on a fairly regular basis, 3 that I did a major project with for a regional retailer, and 2 others that I continue to work with almost on a daily basis, certainly a weekly basis. We're on the phone all the time, and we job out work to one another. So if they book a client who wants, killer training like only Disney used to provide, then they'll pull me into their project. If I book a client, then I'll pull them into my. So that was a huge blessing. Mm-hmm. The roadblock that I hit immediately was that I went from, operating full bore with a salary to, in my mind at least, having nothing. Mm-hmm. I had no infrastructure. I had no clients. I had no contact lists. I had no products that were marketable. I had nothing. And I wanted to stand up a business, and I did, but I was immediately up against, okay, so what do I sell? I guess I have to develop my products. Well, who are my clients? I guess I have to figure that out. And how do they know I exist? Well, I guess I need a website and other things. So I started from scratch. Yes. And so here's what I would tell people like us who are loving their jobs and feeling secure in the positions and perhaps working for leadership who eventually doesn't recognize that. And in my case, they released me, or God released me, depending on how I choose to how I prefer to look at it. I look in hindsight, I would have stayed there forever, and God had bigger plans for me. So God released me from that, and you released yourself from your situation as well. What I would say to people like us, who are loving their jobs, or maybe not, or in their jobs, is that I think everyone should have their own thing. Whether that's a multi-level marketing or a small business on the side, a tutoring business, a childcare babysitting business, a pressure washing business. It doesn't matter what it is. Everyone, I believe, should have something else going on. Mm-hmm. And that, if someone would have told me that back when I was at Disney, I worked long hours, long days there.
Come on, they're going to need me. They're going to want me.
Well, that, and I also would have said, you're nuts. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to do that in my spare time? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to sell makeup and I'm going to sell, vitamins, and I'm going to sell Tupperware. I'm going to do these things. Like, I don't have any spare time. How am I going to do this? Mm-hmm. And what I would say to people is that starting from nothing in a period of transition is frightening and very, very difficult.
Yes.
Having something already up and running, even if only the infrastructure is there, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Even if you've only got 2 or 3 people selling who tier up to you, and you're not doing a whole lot of retail stuff yourself, even if you've only got a few things going on, have something going on so that in a moment's notice you can shift your focus and your time and your energy toward that other thing that may have been sitting relatively dormant for a while.
Yes, yes.
Had I done that, I would have fared much better. Yeah. And so now again, I think back to my grandmother, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Mm-hmm. And I didn't heed that advice.
Yes.
And so now my business is hugely diversified.
And we didn't know what that meant always. Go
No,
put your eggs all in one basket.
I get my
What are you
I get my
talking
eggs from the supermarket. They come in one basket.
That's right. It's
I
all in
didn't
one
know
basket.
that. Yeah,
exactly.
I knew nothing about that.
So once again, that vision, that phrase was there for a lot of us, but no one had defined that phrase.
Right.
And I had intersected into an entrepreneurial job that I never thought, or business that I never thought I would even think about doing, but it changed certain things in my life. And I'll say this to youth workers, always have a way to monetize your position for your family that is over and above. There's a, I like Johnny Lee Dumas with Entrepreneur on Fire, E on Fire, and Life on Fire with Nick Unsworth. I didn't know much about podcasts at all until about 2 months ago, and now this is what we're doing, right? And but the one thing that he interviewed one guy, JLD did, and that was the author, the book or the title was either business or his books were What Would the Roosevelts Do?
Interesting.
And the difference was Vanderbilt, and I love to go to Biltmore House. Have you ever been there in Asheville?
Yeah.
And the Biltmores lost all their money because they either put their eggs all in one basket or they did not think about how our money is going to monetize and build a future for our kids, our grandkids, or our great-grandkids. And they nearly lost that home, and now they actually charge for you to come and see that home so they can keep that property,
right,
keep that home. They own the entire, whatever the national forest is up there in the Asheville, North Carolina area.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yes, and they gave most of that property away to the government. Well, the Roosevelts, what they did was they said, if we have $10 million, we're going to make sure that we have insurance that has $10 million on us to make sure that when we spend that $10 million and we're gone, the family still has $10 million.
There you go.
And so everything that they did, and I had no idea about this till I heard this one little thing, and I'm not even scratching the surface. I don't even understand it all yet. But the one thing that they did was they made sure that they thought of what their family would look like in the future when they were gone.
There you go.
And all of the things they invested in had to do with how our family will continue on and never have to worry about where their next dollar would come from, so that they could influence their family, influence their society, influence their world. How, do what would the Roosevelts do? We always say, WWJD, what would Jesus do? And they're going, what would the Roosevelts do?
There you go.
So, and that, tell us how people can get in touch with you to solicit your services in these areas. Tell them the name of your company one more time. Tell them how they can get to you. Was it through LinkedIn? Is there an address? Give us an email, whatever it is that you want to give people, a phone number.
Yeah, sure, I appreciate that. So my website is victoryperformanceconsulting.net, and I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can also reach me there. We've got a company Facebook page as well. You might check out what's going on there. And our Twitter handle is at victoryperform, at victoryperformc. So just if you type in Victory Performance Consulting, we'll come up. We're pretty active on Twitter as well. I welcome phone calls as well at 352, for those outside the U.S., it's 1-352-978-9736. And I'd love an opportunity to chat about what's going on in your organization or what you're reading or any of those sorts of things. If you've got an issue in your workplace, you've got a performance issue with your employees, maybe you're looking to change your strategy, maybe you've got some planned change that you're about to implement, I'd be happy to chat with you. Happy to spend 20, 30 minutes on the phone, no charge, with you, just to find out what's going on in your organization and how we might be of service to you. And just love to get together with like-minded people by phone, by email. My email address is don@victoryperformanceconsulting.net, so you can reach me by email as well. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of work that plug in there. And again, if you've got issues you think maybe another thought partner would be helpful, and let's throw some ideas around and see where that goes. If it doesn't pan out to be business for my organization, that's okay, because I'm driven by a higher purpose, and it's not all about just generating business for my organization. I want again, my legacy, I want to be that I left this place better than I found it.
And so, but he's given you 20, 30 minutes on the phone with him. I don't know of a guy that's any better in the country than Don Levonius to communicate about those things in your business, in your coaching, and any of these areas that you are needing as a parent even to know about. Okay, Don, appreciate your time, man.
Thanks, Doug.
Great.
Thanks for having me here.
All right. Thanks. We're out.